Meeting to order. Would everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Stand over your heart. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Shannon, will you take a roll call, please?
Councilmember Garola.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Villasenor.
Here.
Mayor Austin.
Here.
Councilmember Brogy.
Here.
Councilmember Mendez.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to approval of the agenda.
I'd like to make one change, minor change to the agenda. I would like to move the committee, commissions, and board reports to after the new business.
Okay.
So number 9 will become, well, I guess we don't have to change the numbers.
Still going to be number 9.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that without amendment.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Move on to item number 5A. Present state Senate Bill 1383, presentation by Nan Drake. I don't see Nan in the audience.
Yeah, Mayor, she called in sick last minute now. We just got notified of it, so I want to let you know she can't make it tonight.
Okay.
We're going to reschedule it for April 11th.
Okay. Seeing that, we're going to move on to public comments. My first speaker is Maya Zumaya, and we have a 3-minute time frame here, and then once it turns yellow, you have 30 seconds left.
Got you. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Austin, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City staff. My name is Maya Zamaya. I serve on the committee for the Fillmore Fire Foundation annual holiday giveaway and the committee for the annual mental health resource fair. Tonight, I would like to introduce myself as the new director of One Step a la Vez here in Fillmore. And I am looking forward to working with City Council and city leaders and stakeholders to provide services for the youth of this community. I'm going to be reaching out and hopefully meeting with you all individually in the coming weeks, and I hope you will accept my invitation. And I want to also invite you, tomorrow night, we are putting on an educational documentary about Latina youth and mental health stigma. So please come to the center at 5 p.m. tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Maya. Okay, we'll move on to, hang on a second. Brandy Hollis.
Hi, how are you guys? I just want to put on public comment again that Dr. Kerrigan, who's with CMH Hospital, is still working with us grant resources. We are doing backpack medicine in Ventura every Monday morning, down in the riverbeds, Mission Park, the other park off of Oak. He has a really great success rate. He'd love to come in. Once again, I asked you 2 weeks ago to put him on the agenda for tonight, to consider putting him on the agenda. He'd love to tell you guys how much, addiction medicine can save our city, county, and state. Really great success rates. I know some of the people we've gotten off the streets. I checked in today with Joe Rivera. He's been over at Spirit for about a month now, and if you don't know who that is, he was usually asleep drunk in the park. Let me tell you, he's sober now and living a pretty nice life, obeying all the shelter rules, and we're really doing stuff. I don't know if you know, there's only Maria and Sergio left in the park here, and both are willing to go to a shelter as soon as it rains and they can't work. So we're really working to get people into places they belong instead of just leaving them on the streets. So please consider putting Dr. Kerrigan on the schedule. Dave Rollins has his information. And then once again, Dr. Kerrigan is donating his time on April 20th. He will come in and do it pro bono if his grant doesn't cover the work on April 20th. But we are doing backpack medicine. The homeless in the riverbed have agreed to come out and meet with us, and hopefully we can get some of them evaluated and placed where there's beds, but most shelters are at capacity, so thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you, Brandy.
Okay, seeing we have no more public comments, I'll move it to item number 7, City Council reports, recommendations, and comments.
Got anything?
Anything?
I do have one. Thank you, Mayor. And that is, sorry, I just wanted to pull this up really quick. Think. Here we go. Okay. All right. There is a program called the California Department, it's the California Department of Food and Agriculture's Healthy Refrigeration Grant Program. And there's about $9 million available. It provides free refrigerators and freezers for corner stores, small businesses, and food donation programs serving low-income communities across California. I'm going to pass more information on to the city to hopefully promote this on social media, and hopefully we can promote it within our businesses here in town, our corner stores. This could be really helpful. It could help a number of small businesses and community-serving organizations in Fillmore and in Piru. So I'm hoping to share this information widely. And again, I'll pass that on. There'll be information both in English and in Spanish, and hopefully we can promote that throughout the city to our small businesses, our mom and pop businesses.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I have two things. One, I'm scrambling on my phone looking for the date, but good news with regard to the Sheriff's Department, and maybe our police chief here can elaborate on it. The date that the new facility is going to open up at Todd Road Jail. I just got the invitation today. It's coming up in, I think, the beginning of May.
I think the opening is next week, isn't it?
I think it's next week.
Is it next
I
week?
think it's next week.
Okay. Anyway, the new facility at Todd Road Jail is a quasi, if I understand this correctly, quasi-medical facility as well. So it's something that the Ventura County Sheriff's Office has never had before. And it's going to be interesting, I think, to see how that does impact possibly opening up beds for people who may be homeless, people with mental health issues, where they don't just cite and release them, but they might have a place to keep them for at least for a few days. So I think that's something exciting coming to our county. So that was one. And again, the date.
It's April 5th.
April 5th.
10 a.m.
Okay, 10 a.m. And that's the grand opening. So that, and then the other thing too that I've been thinking about is with regard to the proclamations that we do every year. I would like to suggest to council that we come up with a calendar so we know ahead of time what we are looking at, if we're, which ones we're going to do, and possibly bring that back to council so we can decide which ones we're going to do throughout the year, so we're not just having to do it, as it comes up to us on a month-to-month basis. Makes sense.
I would agree with that because I've been getting bombarded with requests for proclamations from inside the council and people outside outside of the council. So I'd like to do that, and I know what's coming down the pike.
So that's just to clarify, a calendar from city staff about proclamations that the city will do?
Right, or we can, what I'm going to do is Dave's going to give me some, I'm just going to, some of them are irrelevant ones that we can just take off so we don't have to do proclamations.
Okay.
I meant other ones we'll just leave on there and we'll all decide what we're going to do and what we're not going to do.
But I just think it would be helpful to have,
then we
a
know.
year in advance.
Right.
So that we don't have to, spontaneously decide.
Sure.
As it gets thrown, I think, in Mark's lap, whoever happens to be mayor.
Okay.
Right,
Okay.
is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, we have enough to put it on the agenda for the next meeting. Anything else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to consent calendar. I'd like to entertain a motion, unless we have somebody wants to pull something.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
I have a motion, I have a second. Anybody have any comments? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We're going to move on to item number 9, which is the old 10, which is the new business. And we're going to start with 10A, or 9A. I guess that's what it would be, wouldn't it? 9A, approve the 2023 Ventura County Animal Service Level Request.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council and residents. Today I do have the Ventura County Animal Services representatives. Jackie Rose, the director, is here. There is a small presentation. They will present first, and then I'll come back to make my request.
No, that's fine. You got it. Great. Good evening, Mayor Austin, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Thank you so much for having us here. We were thrilled that Erica asked us to come and do a quick presentation. So I will try and keep it quick, but there are really cute pictures, so that might stop me along the way. So we are here tonight because Erica will be presenting to you the request for the service level additional contract, if you will, for this year. But let me just kind of jump into this. So as you can see, cute puppies, so we always start with cute pictures. Wanted to give you just a very quick overview of Ventura County Animal Services. So my name is the director. My name is Jackie Rose, and I am the director, and I've been here about 4 years. We are very proud of the services that we provide. We actually provide services at 2 locations. Many of you may know the Simi shelter because it's a little bit closer to you, which that's a smaller shelter than our Camarillo, which is our main shelter. The main shelter houses about 250 to 300 animals in Camarillo. The shelter in Simi houses approximately 40 animals. We have 79 full-time equivalent positions for all of our services, and that includes our administrative staff, our sheltering staff, our animal control officers, and all of the other services that we provide. We provide services to all of the unincorporated areas of Ventura County, as well as 8 contracted cities, which you are one of. And you can see on the list of the others who we contract with to provide services. Our fiscal adopted budget for this year, you can see, is approximately $10 million for this year, and our anticipated budget for the upcoming year is 11.7. We currently serve about 6,500 animals each year through all of our services. And please feel free to stop me at any time. This is just a quick, very quick graphic of some high-level numbers for our last year's services. We put together a full annual report that we are putting the final touches on right now. So as soon as that's completed, we will be getting that to you. But this is what we call a dashboard report. This is up on our website every month so that everyone can get a general understanding of the kinds of services that we provide. You can see there are 6,600 animals. Of that, 5,400 approximately were lost, meaning they came in as strays, where about 500 of them came in as owner surrenders. And then you can see the rest of the numbers there. And I'm not going to take the time right now to go through that for you, but we will make sure that you have that information. And again, it is on our website. Very quickly, we have a true, full, comprehensive array of services that we provide. In our animal care services, we provide intake, lost and found coordination, owner redemption, which simply means those people who are coming in to find their lost pets and are able to reunite them with their lost pets, pet licensing, and information and referral. We also have very robust shelter services, and you can see the list of everything that we provide. These are the services that are provided to the animals in our care on a daily basis. Obviously, the basics are care, cleaning, feeding, but as basic as that is also enrichment. It's very important for every animal to receive enrichment on a daily basis. We do everything we can to make sure that while those animals are with us and in our care, they are receiving the highest quality of enrichment and socialization that we can provide. Our goal is to find a placement for all of the animals who come into our facility. So we do that through enrichment and socialization. We do behavioral assessments, of course, adoptions. We do transfer to other agencies, and we have a very robust foster program, which 'tis the season is going to become very full because we're just entering kitten season. We take in approximately 3,000 kittens in a season, and those go into foster homes, which is really the heart and soul of our community, because those are families opening up their homes to help care for animals. And so we're very grateful and also very proud of our foster families. We have a very, very, very robust volunteer program. Right now, I was just talking to our volunteer coordinator yesterday, we actually have approximately 585 active volunteers as we speak. We say it all the time, we can't do our services without our volunteers. We have a pet retention program. That program is specifically designed to help divert animals from coming to our shelter. So I think I'll talk a little bit about that with some data, but I'll just share with you what that means is if we can help someone retain their pet and not have to surrender to us, that's a fantastic thing for us to do. So someone may give us a call that they need to surrender because of a medical problem they can't afford. Well, if we can help pay for that and they can keep their pet, fabulous. Well, we have a dog that's continually running loose. We'll help build a fence. We'll help pay for boarding. We'll help pay for training. Whatever we can to help that animal stay with that family, as long as that family wants to retain that animal. And we have a very, very, very active social media and marketing system. Between Facebook, Instagram, I'm never going to get all these right. I'm a little bit too old for some of these, but Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, there's a whole array of them. You can go and have fun on our social media sites every single day. Veterinary services is part of our shelter and care program, but we do break this out because we have really an extensive veterinary program. We have 3 full-time veterinarians serving all of the animals who come through our shelters. All animals are spayed and neutered, they're microchipped, they're vaccinated, they are medically cleared. Many of our animals receive extensive medical services from us, whether it be mass removals, amputations, enucleations, diagnostics. We really perform an unbelievable level of veterinary care for shelter animals. We also do what's called TNR, or trap, neuter, return surgery for community cats. We offer those surgeries 5 days a week to the community. We also provide veterinary care for homeless populations at the 3 homeless shelters in Ventura. So we're there providing wellness care and ongoing vaccine care for those, and spay neuter. And then, of course, our veterinary team is charged with the things that are not so wonderful in our industry, but those are the forensics for those cases of animals that come in under cruelty and abuse cases. So we're doing the necropsies as well as the other forensic work that happens. I want to talk a little bit about our live release rate. This is a piece that I think is just one of those things that people do not necessarily know about our shelter. We have, for the last 9 years, been able to sustain an incredibly high live release rate. And what that means is that of those animals who enter our shelter, this percentage, as you see on this graph, they are leaving with a live outcome. There's always a conversation of, are you a no-kill shelter? Are you not a no-kill shelter? The truth is we are a life-saving organization. The no-kill status is 90% or better. And you can see that since 2014, we have maintained an above 90% live release rate for animals coming in. 96% this past year for 2022 for dogs, just about 89% for cats, with a combined meaning 93%. We are very proud of this work. This is quite a daunting challenge for a municipal organization, that we are an open admission facility, which means we don't turn animals away. So we work really, really hard. Our staff are incredibly dedicated to making sure we're finding the pathways for animals, and that our euthanasia is really a last resort. The only time we euthanize an animal is if they're so medically compromised that it would be really inhumane to ask them to continue existing in that state, or if we have an animal, and most often it's a dog, that we believe is so significantly dangerous that they pose a safety risk to the public. So we will euthanize those, but you can see it's a very, very small percentage. Specifically for you guys, wanted to give you, sure.
Can I ask you a question on that
Absolutely.
last graph?
Sure.
Thank you. And I'm sorry if I missed it, but
No.
what did happen at that 2014 mark or so?
Thank you for asking. I did
Okay.
gloss over that because I'm trying to go pretty quickly,
Sorry.
but I love talking about
What are
this.
those
So
things that you have to ask.
thank you.
What was that?
So in 2012, Ventura County Animal Services made the decision to move from being an organization that was euthanizing animals for time and space. And I have to say that practice of euthanizing for time and space was the industry practice. It wasn't that Ventura County was doing something different or something, if you will, wrong. It was historically the way animal sheltering was managed. However, in the mid to late 2000s, a movement really came afoot that said, wait a second, We don't need to euthanize all of these animals, and how do we do this better and differently? And Ventura County was one of the early adopters of that as a municipal, and said in 2012, we want to move to that. So in 2012, they adopted the philosophies, and by 2014, January 2014, they had hit a 90% live release rate. And we've never looked back since. So that is the distinction. And it's interesting if you look at 2010, for example, what that says for a cat, which is the orange line, was at that time, if you were a cat who came to our organization, you had a 65% chance of being euthanized just because you walked through our doors. We no longer do that. We no longer euthanize for time and space ever. We have not euthanized a healthy, adoptable, or treatable animal since 2014. The only animals, again, who are euthanized are those who are medically so seriously ill and or those who pose a safety risk to the community. So thank you for asking that question. I appreciate it. Specifically for your city, we want to just talk a little bit about your numbers. You are a smaller city, but you actually bring in a fair number of animals considering the size of your location. You can see a little bit of a drop in 2021, and these numbers, I have to say, if you're looking at the green bar, that's current, but that is only through February of this year. So it is July through February. We still have another 4 months to go, and I anticipate that those numbers are going to rise because, again, kitten season is upon us, and so we will see an increase. But you can see where you're hovering. Interesting, pre-COVID, 181 that year of 1920, and then hit the same number 2 years later. It's not a typo, it's just a coincidence. There was a little bit of drop at the beginning first COVID year, which we saw nationwide as well as here for Ventura County. And I anticipate that your numbers are probably going to rise close to where you've been historically. Just looking at it by species, the way that, or the types of animals that are impounded for those same years, if you will, you can see the bulk of them. The red line are dogs. You can see the bulk of the animals that come from your jurisdiction are dogs, followed by cats, and then some birds. Small number of livestock. We have not had any livestock yet this year, and some others. And others can be anything that range from a turtle, or an injured wildlife, an injured hawk. It could be a chicken. It could be multiple things. But you can see where we are. So again, your numbers are fairly consistent. A little bit of dip with the COVID. Couple years, and we'll see what it looks like at the end of this year. That's the species. Oh, sorry. So now this is the adoption side. So that was animals coming in. This is the animals going out. And again, same colors for the same species. So you can see that you've had, a much higher number last year of adoptions than you've had in the last couple years, which is always fabulous to see, for dogs, and a little bit less for cats. Not uncommon, again, with COVID issues. And we'll see, you can see we've had small number of adoptions this year from your jurisdiction. Not exactly sure what that is, but we'll wait for the end of the year. It may be, again, part of a kitten season, which often, even though it's dogs we're talking about, often does bring people in and they see dogs and they fall in love. They take a dog and a cat. So we'll see what happens at the end of the year. RTO, that means return to owner. These are those animals that are reunited with their lost families. For your jurisdiction, fiscal year 1920 was a really fabulous year for this jurisdiction. We were able to reunite 35 lost dogs, 23 the following year, 30, and then 18. You'll see for cats, birds, livestock, it's very small. I will just let you know that nationally, the average return to owner rate in shelters for dogs is 26%, and for cats is 5%. Well, we are very proud that Ventura County, our return to owner rate for dogs is 60%, and for cats is 9%. So again, your numbers are, a representative for your pro rata share of this, but we are very happy with those numbers, and this honestly for me is the best thing we do. If anyone has ever lost a pet, you know how devastating it is. And to be able to return pets to someone is really, I think, one of the best services that we provide. It touches my heart. And then very quickly, we talked about the sheltering services and the clinical services, and then we have our field program services that we provide, and this is field and dispatch. These are our animal control officers who are out in the field responding to complaints, loose dogs, animal bites, investigations for cruelty, response, those kinds of things. These are our officers out there. It's also a big part of our rabies suppression. We do live in a state that's rabies endemic, so rabies suppression is very important to us. We do provide 24-hour coverage for priority 1, which we consider the most important cases, and we do a lot of response for disaster. Unfortunately, we all face that, whether it's here locally or sending our officers to do mutual aid assistance. We send our officers, unfortunately, almost every year. Last year they went to the El Dorado and Caldor fires. The year before they were at the Butte fires, and they'll go for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. So we have a pretty robust disaster response program. And again, here are the numbers for your jurisdiction as far as calls that have been coming in. 20, and I apologize, I don't know why 1920 is not on here. That's an oversight. But you can see your calls kind of jumped up higher the second year coming out of COVID, interestingly enough. Again, we saw a dip at the first year of COVID, and so far we've responded to 203 calls for your jurisdiction. And the types of calls, this is just a quick breakdown. I'm not going to go over all of them, but you'll see the bulk of them tend to be quarantines for animal bites. When an animal does bite, there is a quarantine. We can either quarantine at the shelter or we do a home quarantine, which is fine. We'll go out, check the animal, place them under quarantine, and then release at the end of that quarantine period. So that's a very large percentage. Loose dog is another one that rises fairly high for your area. And welfare checks. Very quickly, citations. We are an enforcement agency, but we do very much take a community policing approach to our work, and so you can see very few citations really are issued. Those are totals. So, there were 4 in 2021, and I'm missing that number, so that's 2, 3, 4, same thing for 2021, 22. And I apologize for those numbers being not on the chart, but those are all 2s, so not that complicated, honestly, when I look at it. Money, here we go, the part everybody loves. So for our budget, when we look at our budget, we do what's considered a consortium of costs with all of the contracted cities plus the unincorporated area, and that is broken out through a pro rata share for our overall total budget. So for your city, the animal care services expenses, $142,000 for all of the services that we provide for the sheltering side of the services. For the field services, our animal control officers, you can see, is just about $24,000. That's based on an hourly rate, different than the consortium of share cost. That is a true hourly cost per animal control officer. You guys contract with us for 4 hours a week. And so that's what that comes out to at our rate of $115 per officer hour. We have a cost for licensing processing for about $3,900. You can see to process licenses in your jurisdiction, and we also have an automated citation program where if people are not compliant, they're then noticed with automatic citation for failure to license. However, the offsets for you do have money that comes back to you, and that is through that revenue collection. We collect on your behalf, and then that is offset. We take a $6 administrative fee for the licensing. The rest of that comes back to you. So whatever your license rate is, it's everything minus a $6 fee. So we're collecting, and that's then offset for you. And the redemption revenue, those are those return to owner charges. When someone pays, they're paying for the impound and the boarding of those animals, and that, again, comes back to you. So your net cost for a city is $140,000, $859, as you can see there. And lastly, I do just want to mention that we also have a foundation. It is a foundation that is exclusively dedicated to VCAS, to Ventura County Animal Services. It is the used to be called the Friends of the Shelter. It's now called the Animal Services Foundation of Ventura County. It is a nonprofit organization. It is overseen and managed by a board of directors, which of course are also all volunteers, and its entire purpose is to serve the mission for us. So when I mentioned before a pet retention program, a good example is that pet retention program which diverts animals from coming into our shelter. That position is paid for through our general dollars, our general operating dollars, that you also help to support through the consortium of costs. But the services that that person provides to the owners is paid through for our foundation. So if it's covering medical costs, building a fence, paying for boarding, bringing in a trainer, those dollars are paid through by our foundation. So that's a really good example of that partnership that we have. Our foundation supports our agency depending on the year, at a budget of about $200,000 a year of additional revenue to help support our daily operations. And then, of course, I always have to do the pitch for ways to donate, but that is the biggest piece, and it really is through donors as a 501c3 that supports that foundation. We also do utilize the foundation to be the arm for many of our grants that we bring in. So I think, there you go. Last of my cute pictures. I know it's a little bit longer than maybe you would like, but I hope I went fast enough for you. But I'm happy to answer any questions I can.
I do have a question. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. It's very thorough. And that's about when I saw the pie chart on our share of loose dogs, aggressive dogs, bites that happen. I feel like that all kind of is in the same category of dogs that are not well trained, and maybe owners who haven't done that training, right, with their dogs. So my question is there any kind of service? We know that there's the private dog trainers, and and sometimes they're pricey, they're expensive. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of folks here have dogs, and again, may not have those funds, or are using the funds, have the funds to do the training. Is there any kind of something available that helps with that can maybe,
I love the question, and I will tell you, honestly, there's not much as far as many resources in our community. It is something that we very much would like to put into our program. To begin with, I'd like to be able to do that for post-adoption. And then I'd like to be able to offer on-site training for the general public. At this moment, we don't have the staffing or the funds to be able to do it, but it is on our list. It is one of those community resources that we do know is very, very important. What I will say to you, though, is that we do have lots of resources listed on our website. There's a lot of information today accessible to people through the internet. There's pros and cons to all of the internet things that are there, and having to go hunt and find all of those things, but there are some really good resources. So we offer people that resource to go look. And the other thing I will say, people call our facility every day with questions, and our staff will help walk them through and give them some points and tips and tricks and things that we can offer over the phone, but we don't have a formalized program, not at this time. But it is something, if we could find a grant and some funding to support it, we'd very much like to do that. It's a great question.
Great. Okay, thank you. Next question is about stray dogs. And I've heard, and I don't have any statistics to back it up, but that Fillmore, Piru, us over here in the Santa Clara Valley, more rural, have our larger proportion of folks who drop off their dogs. And if that is so, and it happens to be in the city of Fillmore, how, are we paying for those, the pickups of these dogs that are left behind?
Let me make sure I follow the question, that people are, if you will, dropping dogs in your jurisdiction that are not originating from your jurisdiction.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
That's what I hear.
I'll be very honest, I don't know if that's true or not. It's one of those, I want to say it's one of those things we hear about jurisdictions. We hear this everywhere. And I've done animal services now in 4 different states and 4 different locations, and 2 of them very rural. And those are always the comments. I don't know how to quantify it, right? Unless we can actually see someone doing that and they drive off and we know where they originated from, I don't know. There probably is a grain of truth to it. I also think that for most people, if they're going to go to that extreme, they probably are going to drop them somewhere closer to themselves. I don't know. But it is one of those things that we hear, and unfortunately, we do charge from where an animal comes from the jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? You? I have a couple of questions. In your attachment A on page 3 of 10, I was wondering why you're using 2018, 2017, and 2016 to estimate what our percentage is when it appears that our numbers, if we were to use 2019, 2020, and 2021, would go down percentage-wise.
I don't have that. I think that was a document that's prepared by Erica, so I don't have that in front of me. But if I'm looking, I think it is simply an example.
But it shows a 2% future number to be used for us.
But it is simply an example. That's all that is.
So you will recalculate based on 2019?
The numbers that we have provided to you are based on a 3-year weighted average for the last previous 3 years. That's simply an example how those numbers are calculated, yes.
And then I have a question regarding the $115 per hour. Do you guys have any rate study or something you've done to show that it's 115? I mean, what's the breakdown?
I can tell you that we are not at full cost recovery for our animal control services. Over the last several years, we have continued to raise those rates, and we've still not hit full cost recovery. Depending on our calculations, the lowest that we have come up with for our animal control services is approximately $150 an hour. The highest, depending on what we put into that mix, is closer to $248. And so we're not even close to a full cost recovery. We are not including fleet, we're not including gas, we're not including all of those things at a full rate at this point. I am honest in saying to you that we will continue to look to increase, but we've done it in a strategic and I think a respectful way. In 2019, we were at $60. And we did a significant jump that first year, and we went from 60 to 90. And then we went from 90 to 100. Then we didn't go to a higher rate the following year because we were very sensitive to everyone's budget with COVID, and we understood the impacts that was having on the cities. We did go this year to 115. The county is subsidizing animal control services for all of the cities that we contract with because we're not at full cost recovery. And I believe, and I'm going to look to my animal services director, Phil Rarick, who is really our numbers guy, and Phil probably could speak to this better than I, but I believe the county is subsidizing close to a little over $1 million. Am I correct on that, Phil?
So,
thank you.
So yeah, we do look at this, and to Jackie's point, we try to be sensitive. The reason for the current rate increase is intentionally to mitigate some of those costs rather than have a steep jump. If I look at the estimated costs for the upcoming year, field services, looking at indirect, direct, administrative, all loaded up, it's about $2.367 million to run our field services program. When I look at what we project for collection from our participating cities, it's $473,000. Now, we have to take into effect that we provide services for unincorporated county. So we know that we have a portion of that from an operating expense that typically hovers somewhere around 23, 25, 27%. And we over-index in terms of when we can't assign or allocate expenses from a city, we just do it, right? So it's even higher than that, to be quite honest. So if you look at the all-in costs for the county, it's $1.89 million out of the overall $2.367 million. So it is intentionally kept low. It may not feel that way. And I'll speak to the fact that this really exists. When you look at the contract, for example, with the sheriff's office, you can allocate those expenses full-time. The problem that we run into is that you're paying for services only when that call exists. We have to have staff on board, we have to train, we have to keep them And for any of those off times, again, there's no cost recovery from that. So to say, 4 hours a week, how do you allocate that with FTEs? So we really will be looking at this, coming up with new contracts. I know that may not be favorable, but the truth is it's subsidized to an extent that just really isn't sustainable for us. It's really not within what the county's overall direction is, but we want to be sensitive and we want to be thoughtful and not have an overall increase that's from year to year unsustainable. So,
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Any other questions?
Great. Well, thank you all very much for your time. I very much appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come share what we're doing. And if you have not been to our facility, I invite each and every one of you, come on out, give me a call. We'd be happy to give you a tour around and send you home with a kitten or a puppy. So,
No, I already have 2 ferals that we've
well,
adopted.
Mayor, we're going to be talking since you're on our commission. Everybody gets a kitten. So, thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, if I don't have any discussion, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the 23-24 service level request as provided.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 9B, consideration of whether to appoint a youth sports board member to the Cultural Arts and Recreation Commission.
I'll be presenting this one, Mayor and Council. At the last City Council meeting, the Council requested an item for the discussion of whether to revise the composition of the newly reconstituted Cultural Arts and Recreation Commission to add the appointment of a non-voting youth sport board member to the commission. This would be an 8th spot on the commission. There are 5 voting members who each serve 4-year terms, which 5 spots are all full, along with 2 one-year non-voting members, which are students. Those positions are currently and are often vacant. So this would be an 8th person. Let's see. We covered that. Staff is recommending that the City Council not amend the code to authorize the appointment of an 8th member at this time, as there are a limited number of residents who fit the criteria of a youth sports board of director, and anyone who fits the criteria is already eligible to apply for a voting position on the commission. As well, the meetings of the commission are open to the public. They occur on the 3rd Monday of each month at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. And the current board members of local youth organizations can attend, participate, and provide comments during any meeting, as well as seek to apply for one of the 5 appointed voting positions on the board. That's it for the presentation. Please discuss this item and give staff your direction. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for staff?
Under the current restructuring of those 2 commissions into the Cultural Arts and Recreation Commission, with that being the second reading being approved earlier, would the next meeting then be the May meeting? Is that the first? April. Or will the meeting happen in April with that 30-day timeline for it to, or what are we looking at?
So an ordinance is effective 30 days after today, so it would be in May that it would be eligible to have its first meeting.
Okay. And we expect that, Dave, or they do have an agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they will have a meeting effective after the resolution or ordinance goes into effect. Okay. They're going to schedule a meeting. One of the topics was the May Festival. Right. We also talked about ball diamond. We had a conversation today with Little League president. We're going to try to do something as well with the groups to have a side conversation, if you will,
okay,
with the youth groups.
Okay. Yeah, in my estimation, with the way that a lot of these sports groups would like to be heard, it might be difficult with actually adding an appointed member, not just because there wouldn't be an opportunity for all to apply. That would be the case, right? It wouldn't just be us picking, but whether or not there's an even distribution, or even if whether any of these boards have the manpower or the time to be able to fairly get represented in that way. Presumably, that person would represent sports, and I think it would potentially sway a little bit of like a sense of favoritism, even if there really wasn't. I think encouraging participation at the meetings from all of these sports boards is probably the right way to start. And if we do see that there's just not good representation from the community at those meetings and via public comments, then maybe we might consider this down the road. But I do think that we haven't really had a chance to test yet. We took the action to combine the commissions so that they could be more effective rather than having two separate commissions. And I think even if this idea were to work, it's probably still too early to make that change, in my opinion. And also then it has the potential down the road to favor those with just more people because they can afford to have somebody go to these other meetings. And it may not even serve their purpose as we think it might, because it's only once a month. They don't meet as frequently as we do. And the sports boards, they're moving quick. You know, their season would be, a lot of seasons are within the span of 2 of those meetings. So, you know, it happens quick and there's changeover a lot in the field. So I don't think I support it for those reasons. And also it's still, the new commission is untested at this point, I think.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councilmember Girl. I appreciate those comments, and I think they're very insightful. And so my comment on this is just my idea in bringing this forward before our city council was that I felt, and maybe this is just also just online, that that maybe that communication or that relationship could be strengthened between the rec commission and the sports boards. And I'm not taking anything away from our Parks and Recreation staff. I'm sure they are in communication with all of the youth leagues who are using the fields and that sort of thing. And so there's a point in the staff report here. It says staff recognizes the value of the relationship with board members between the city and youth sport organizations, but believes the objectives can be accomplished without board members being appointed. And yeah, I believe so too. And I think if our staff is able to, you know, and I know they have the contact information for each of those youth sports organizations. And I just want to encourage that information is passed down through the boards, particularly as we're doing a lot, I think, and we probably may be doing a lot more in the next year or two regarding the fields, regarding improvements, and just keeping everyone just abreast, you know, and like you said, giving that invite to the sports boards to be a part of the commission and to be active, you know, participants. So, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to continue on with what Councilmember Villasenor and Councilmember Gurrola said. I agree with all of their statements, and especially what Councilmember Gurrola said. We haven't given our new action that we took at the last meeting enough time to really take place. So I believe that we should give it more time and see what the participation is, and really encourage these other groups, the sports groups, and all the groups in our city to participate in our new cultural and recreation committee, and to attend these meetings, you know, and we just got to get the word out and communicate with them.
I would agree with that. It's a little disappointing, you know, it says here in our report, the 2 non-voting positions, which are the student commissioners on the current board, the way it's established, are currently vacant, which is often the case. And so I'm wondering why that is. And I'm wondering what we can do, especially you and I on the.
Yeah, I definitely think we'll bring that to the school board next time we meet with the school board to encourage.
Yeah, I'd like to, and for those of you that are out there listening and viewing from home or here, you know, we do have 2 vacant positions for students, which would be a great learning opportunity and a training field for those that are interested in getting involved in city government and getting a feel for what this is all about. So send your students.
I appreciate if you and Chris could talk to this,
We will.
because
We will.
we've had 2 vacancies probably almost every year I've been on council. We've never had we've only had 1 student representative at one time, and we've never had 2. So I'd appreciate if you guys could work on that.
Would it be an opportunity to maybe the students that do participate, for them to get service hours for it? Maybe that would be a way to encourage them to do it?
Yeah, I'm sure it would be, yep.
I have someone I'm working on. I'll keep you posted.
Okay, good. Okay, with that, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to not revise the current composition of the Cultural Arts and Recreation Commission.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Moving on to item number 9C, consideration of the 2022 annual progress report for the status of the city's general plan housing element.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and Fillmore community. The State of California Government Code requires that cities and counties file an annual report with the Housing and Community Development Department and the Office of Planning and Research, that's a mouthful, of our progress toward meeting our housing element goals. Our housing element goals are established in our most recent draft. The planning period for our housing element is 2021 through 2029. Our housing element goals are that is to produce housing at various income levels. Those income levels are established by SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments. I believe one of you may be on the board or representative. No? Carrie? SCAG develops what everybody in the planning world calls RHNA, and I realize we have our own vernacular. RHNA is Regional Housing Needs Assessment. They assess what the housing demand is for the state of California. You may have heard that we're in a crisis for housing in the state of California. So there are these mandates to report our progress toward meeting those housing goals. Currently, as you'll see in the report, we are taking steps toward meeting those goals. Some of the vernacular that you may not be as familiar with, besides RHNA, entitlement is the planning process. That's sort of the discretionary approval process. So we do have projects in the pipeline which are under the entitlement phase. That does not count toward meeting our RHNA goals. What does count toward meeting our RHNA goals are the building permits. So it's building permits only. We also have a category there for occupancies. Units that may have been built in 2021, or permitted, I should say, in 2020, 2021 are getting occupancy now. They do not necessarily count toward meeting our RHNA goals. They would have applied toward our previous planning period. So the numbers are there on the table. I won't belabor you with a bunch of statistics, but we are making progress. We're in just our first year, and most of our housing is in the above moderate income category. I should call it our median family income. Median family income is the basis that we peg our income categories on. So above 120% of our median family income, which happens to be about $94,000 in the county of Ventura, 80% is low income. That's about $75,000. 120% of $94,000 is above moderate. Most of our housing stock, as you can see that we're entitling and building, happens to be in that pipeline. That pipeline represents people moving up in the city of Fillmore. We have a demand for housing at that level. So as people are moving up, you have vacancy, or you have vacancy at housing at maybe the starter level or the second home level too. So that number is a good number because it represents organic movement in growth and economic stability if the people are gaining equity in their properties as they move up and they're reassessed, and you're getting tax revenue and so forth from that. And then the other categories are the low income, which like I said, are $75,000 is considered low income. And we do have a fair amount of those in the pipeline as well. So all those tables are in there. As part of the report too, you may have noticed in the housing element, we identify sites or properties or capacity, which is generated through our zoning. Our zoning increases densities to show that we have the capacity to accommodate all of the growth that we would need. We have the capacity, in fact, to get almost 300% of the housing stock that we need. So that allows us flexibility if projects come down in the pipeline who want to reduce some densities on our property, or maybe they want to do commercial instead of residential. We have enough capacity, cushion, so to speak, that we can do that. So we have a lot of flexibility there to work within these numbers. I'm available to answer any questions. Our staff's recommendation is that the board accept and file this annual progress report, and then subsequently I will post this report to state HCD, and it will go into their statistics. I'm here to answer any questions.
Questions for Brian?
Brian, I had a question.
Yeah.
On the ADUs, how do those count towards our arena numbers? What's the?
They are counted toward the above moderate income because we don't require that they meet an income level, and we would have to track rents and things like that. So we haven't been requiring ADUs to do that. It's not necessary, but it does provide a lower income demand. It does meet some demand because there are folks out there who can only, afford maybe a small unit, or maybe it's grandma, who needs to move into what we used to call a granny flat, things like that. So it does meet a lower income type demographic by practice. The paperwork in terms of making that count toward these RENA numbers is much more challenging, and most folks who do the ADUs wouldn't want to go through that process.
I do have a few questions. Thank you, Brian. So on the report where it says that the city's identified 113 candidate housing sites, are those separate parcels, or just thinking of space in town at the number 113? I'm just wondering where that comes from.
It could be parcels or lots.
Okay.
Tax parcels would represent maybe a common owner of individual lots. So I would say that 113 candidate sites, most likely it's a lot as opposed to a parcel, as it all will pan out, but there may be some overlap.
Okay.
Those sites are what you might call underutilized, maybe. So the density that we've allowed in the zoning would allow more housing units than what exists today.
Okay.
And there's a lot of that.
Okay.
So I think in our housing element, you might recall, we're upzoning properties along the highway to allow more density.
Right.
Higher density.
And those properties are counting, I remember from a meeting a while back, those properties are counting towards our arena number, although there's homes on them currently, because they were rezoned as higher density, they can be included.
Yeah, they count, technically, you're right. Technically, they count toward our housing element capacity.
Okay.
But our arena numbers are really met by issuing building permits. And we don't have to issue building permits. We just have to show in our housing element that we have the capacity to meet RENA plus. So we get that through our building permits. And there's one other point I was going to make. Anyway, any other questions you guys might have, I can.
Okay. I had one last one about the moderate housing, and I know I've had discussions with you and with others in the staff about the difficulty there. And so, there's the low-income housing developers, right? Who they got the subsidies and they work through the state and federal. Then there's the market rate. But it's sort of like who develops moderate, or how do you, if you need those numbers, I guess that's just a question, general. Like how do we draw in people for those starter homes or those condominiums or that sort of thing?
Usually the market will dictate what's out there, and you're right on, because our demographic is demanding moderate level and market rate level. There's a lot of older properties here where people have built that equity and they want to move up. There's younger families and stuff. We're not like a lot of old cities like Santa Barbara where you actually have move down market. In Fillmore, we have a move up market, which frees up all of this housing stock at these different levels. There is a demand, and that was in fact bared out when Many Mansions built their project. the waiting list, I want to say, is like 1,000 people or something, and they turned away a huge number of folks that didn't qualify for the low and very low, but they may have qualified for the moderate. And I think that there is currently an appetite for moderate and an appetite to build, to meet that demand here in the city. There are developers looking at that number who we're hearing from. So that's being recognized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hopefully they come.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. And then my last question,
Yeah.
and I don't want to go too off base on this, but regarding the housing element, where it stands is we approved it here on council, we sent it up to the state. You've been going, the city has been going back and forth with the state, but it's still coming back to council for like a final stamp of approval? Am I?
Yeah, I think Kevin
I don't
can
want to
speak
go
to
into too
this.
much detail.
Kevin can speak to this, but it was submitted to the state, and the state goes through a review process. It's about 90 days thereabouts, and then they submit comments to us. We address those comments and questions, and we send it. I believe then we bring it back to you, and then we send it back to the state in hopes of certification.
Like that. Okay.
So you'll get a crack at it before it goes back to the state.
Got it. Okay.
And then once it's certified, it's in play.
Got it.
But one important distinction is that, like I had mentioned before, we really just need to show that we have the capacity to provide the housing.
Right.
So that's a different aspect than what really is in the building of the homes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're looking okay. The state laws, you've heard about all these different streamlining provisions, SB 35, SB 330. We did create forms to help that streamlining process so that applicants coming in to build these types of housing projects can download those application forms and guidelines, checklists, and so forth. Those are in effect so long as we haven't completely built our arena numbers or issued permits for our arena numbers. So our number is 415. Until we hit 415, a developer can come in and take advantage of those state streamlining laws.
Got it.
Once we hit that number, then
That's off
then
the
we
table.
get to say, here's our municipal code again.
Got it. Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to probably reemphasize, but also clarify what you were talking about with the move-up market, because our current arena units reflect like an above moderate type build.
Yeah.
Does the historical sale averages in Fillmore over the past year or two, if you guys look at that, fit into the moderate, so that like they don't necessarily have to be new builds for people to seek moderate housing? It does seem to me that a lot of the newer builds are above the average in town, but that then means there's other, if people are moving up in Fillmore,
That's right.
then there's other moderate housing available.
That's correct. And so that's reading into the statistics and turning out real information, because it's just numbers until you really, you look at, what does it mean for the community? And so I know that down in the bridges here, a lot of the folks moving into those homes, a lot of them have to be my neighbors, I know they're from Fillmore and they've moved up. They have a bigger family, they've expanded, they've looked for they want a new home. And then they vacated another property elsewhere here in the city. So that next family has an opportunity to move into maybe a fixer-upper or whatever the case may be. But when you do get that turnover, you also get a reassessed value. So the tax base goes up. And in Fillmore, we have a lot of value that's in the land that resides there because the properties aren't turning over as fast. But when you have homes at all these different levels, you start getting that turnover and you're generating more revenues up and down the market. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to file and receive.
Okay, so moved on that.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion, I have a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item number 10, committee, commissions, and board reports. Anybody?
Yeah, one of the committees that I wanted to mention, I've been to a few meetings the last couple of weeks, but one that I wanted to mention was one of the subcommittees for the Ventura County Transportation Commission, and that subcommittee is the Santa Paula Branch Line Advisory Committee. So it focuses on the train track, basically, and the Sierra Northern Train Company that's working out of Santa Paula. We had a meeting on the 16th of March with the subcommittee, which probably was made up of about 12 to 14 people who are representatives of the Santa Clara Valley and 126 corridor, so Santa Paula, Fillmore. Our county rep, Kelly Long, was there, and we had several, which I was very pleased to see, several of our constituents from Fillmore and the Fillmore area attending. So we went over several different issues, and the one matter I wanted to highlight is the bridge that's down because of the weather right up here on Old Telegraph. And so they are estimating at this point that bridge repair, which is holding up any movement on the activities for the train, for the most part, they're estimating that it'll take probably about a year at a minimum to repair it at a cost of $1.4 to $2.3 million. So that doesn't fall on the city of Fillmore, thankfully. So it's out of our hands. But the other issue that's related to that, and I'm hearing a lot from constituents, and I think a lot of council members are the rail cars that are being stored along Old Telegraph. That was addressed. The citizens from the Fillmore area that were there spoke very eloquently to that issue. And they had everything well documented and did not get any positive feedback from Sierra Northern. They unfortunately were not in attendance to that meeting. We expected them to be there, and they were not there. So all the information was forwarded to them, and they're still at an impasse on doing anything about the rail cars. That's not to say that they're not working on it. And I just wanted to get that information out there to those of you who are driving by Old Telegraph and concerned about that blight and what that means, and that it's being worked on. And we've got some community workers on this from the area who are very, very diligent about this whole topic, and they're going to keep working at it. So that's where we are.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
I just had a follow-up question on that, Carrie, and that is the line west of Santa Paula. Do we happen to know, or I know Sierra wasn't there, but does anyone happen to know if Sierra's using that line and going to Ventura?
They say they are.
Okay.
They say they are. They've used that portion of the track actually for freight a couple of times, so going that direction. But
okay.
And the reason they are not moving the cars that are parked here near Old Telegraph and Grand Avenue is because they have the new rail cars, which is a tourist attraction where you get on these little, look like go-karts kind of. And I believe they have 8 or 10 of them. And you can pay, I will say, a whole lot of money.
Yep.
Can I say,
Yep.
can I share that dollar amount?
Yeah.
It's publicized. $249 for a round trip to pedal yourself from Santa Paula to where the rail cars are stopped on the tracks and back to Santa Paula. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the information, Carrie.
Anybody else? Okay. Seeing that, we're gonna move on to item number 11, City Manager's verbal report.
Okay, a couple items tonight. Just want to update everybody on the sewer line repair. As you know, we had a little incident last week, the sewer line collapse. And right now, our design to fix it, it's about 95% complete for phase 1. That's the C Street line. And we hope to have that final design by the end of this week, and then we'll get to the contractor to get their pricing to get the project started. The bypass pumps are working as expected, and there have been no spills or complications since March 18th on that. Once phase 2 gets completed, we're going to come back and talk about phase 2, installing a line on D Street. But we need to get phase 1 done, and that has most of the sewer capacity going into it. So once we get that fixed, upsize the line, we'll be in great shape right now. And the next council will be back and estimate the cost so far to divert the cost around, just so everybody know where we're at with that. And the other item, on Monday, April 3rd, I'm very happy to announce this. We're going to be putting the Fillmore Equestrian Center up for sale. And information we placed on the city webpage. The notice is going to include sufficient a sufficient description of the former burn dump site to make sure that the prospective purchasers are aware of the current conditions and ongoing monitoring by the various agencies, which include the Regional Water Board, Cal Recycle, and the Ventura County Environmental Health, the local enforcement agency section. They've all reviewed the language and supplied language to Tiffany to include on the notification, so we'll have that all posted. We are planning on doing it on Monday on the 3rd, and once we get offers, we'll bring it back to City Council for discussion, and hopefully we'll have a sale by the end of the month. That'll be our Easter gift. I'm hoping. So again, people will buy it and they'll take it over and run it as they see fit. But right now, City Council has elected to move forward with the sale, and we are moving forward on Monday, April 3rd. And I have nothing else tonight.
Okay, with that, I'm going to move to item number 12, adjournment. I'm going to adjourn adjourn the meeting to the next regularly scheduled meeting at 6:30 on Tuesday, April 11th. Thank you. Good night.